Our third and final session all together. Again, my name is Chris Cochran. I'm the advisory CISO at Huntress. That means I spend a lot of time talking to technologists and MSP leaders about cybersecurity practices so they can serve their customers better. And as always, it is my honor to kick off these sessions. In session one, we dove into security controls. In session two, we talked about handling objections. And to wrap things up, today's session, we are talking about a winning strategy, the business review. This is going to be all about proactively integrating cyber insurance into your security services. As always, this session is presented by two titans in cybersecurity insurance from FifthWall Solutions. We have, again, Dustin Bolander, the VP of Operations and Tech, and also the owner of Clear Guidance Partners. And the other half of this duo is Will Brooks, cyber insurance evangelist, dedicating his entire life to demystifying the complexities of cyber insurance just for you. And with that, I will kick it over to Dustin and Will. Over to you.
Hey, thanks everyone for jumping on again. We're pumped to dive into this again. Third week of this masterclass, we're going to be touching on the business review, how to incorporate cyber insurance into that business review. When you're meeting up with the client, you're saying, hey, look, I want to go over your security. We want to talk about where you were last year, why we're looking at this year, or where you were last quarter, how things are working. Whatever your approach is, how often you do those. Well, I hear them as XBRs now, right? Fill in the blank for X, how often you're doing it. But the reality is incorporating cyber insurance is going to be really helpful. One, for security sales, and two, just to ensure on your end, ensure with an E, I have to preface that, ensure on your end that your client is going to be able to withstand the blast of an incident. So I just want to make sure that's both really important, both from the business growth perspective and from the protecting the client perspective. So, Dustin, I'm going to share out my screen here. And as always,
I'm really
Becky,
curious. I haven't heard the XBR thing before, so I wonder if that's we do them on different time periods, or is that I'm giving myself wiggle room because I know I don't do them actually quarterly.
I like that. Yeah, I heard that recently, and I was like, all right. I remember.
Yeah, and we also,
I remember most clients' password. Jim's got an answer in there that I think is. I don't know if it's meant to be serious or if it's more sarcastic, saying my clients have terrible passwords, so I'm able to remember all of them, or if he's just got this memory where it doesn't matter what the string is, he just knows it. Either way, awesome. Cool. So I'm gonna share this out.
Yeah, and I was going to also say thanks. Becky from Huntress is going to be helping us out on chat and wrangling all the different questions and everything that comes up. So today's
a few of my own, because that's what I do.
Awesome. Yeah, so today's is going to be the world's worst PowerPoint. So by the way, I'm not planning on just sitting here reading off of this, but we're going to send a link out for you guys. So Will and I have put this together and refined it over the last 2 years, where this is your guidebook, so to speak, on integrating cyber insurance with your QBRs. So you guys will get a copy of this. But today we're going to talk about, like Will said, integrating it into your QBR process, doing it throughout the year, right? What we all hate as MSPs is that last minute rush. The agent sits there and goes, hey, Mr. Client, I got, your cyber insurance renewal. It's happening 7/1. So great, can you fill these forms out for me real quick? So it's building into the process to get ahead of that. Some defensive measures, some things that help on cybersecurity, that help on budgeting. But more importantly, though, a lot of the questions that we get whenever we're giving this presentation is around, how do I ask for this? So that's one of the things we're going to go over today is how do I get a copy of that policy? How do I get those expiration dates? We've seen a lot of different techniques that work well, some that don't work so well on that sort of thing. So all that being said is ask a lot of questions, right? That's what Will and I are here for. Chris mentioned I still own an MSP down in Austin, Texas with about 26 employees. So I'm spending a lot of time in cyber insurance these days. But most of what we're talking about has been proven in the field, so to speak, and then with all the other FifthWall partners as well. So
Dustin, real quick before we dive into content, I am curious, kind of based on what we're talking about here. How many of you are actively saying, you know what, one business review, at least one business review a year, you're at least having some level of conversation around cyber insurance. Like if we're assuming quarterly, are you devoting at least part of one to cyber insurance? Just yes or no in the chat. I'm curious because I know it's something that's awkward to talk about.
Yeah, and touching back to our previous presentation is one of the things that you want to be doing is bringing it up, because even if it's not something that you want to get into, right? It's a lot of paperwork. Insurance companies are dumb. I'm going to agree with it a little bit there. But the big thing is it's such a hot topic right now that if you're not bringing it up with your clients, another MSP is, right? So they get the insurance renewal and another MSP has been emailing them, and maybe they're a little bit upset about something. They answer the phone. Or even worse, what we're seeing now is these insurance companies are buying MSPs, buying MSSPs, or the agencies are partnering with somebody. So now suddenly you go to get on a call with them and there's somebody else there that's technically a competitor and you're going, what the heck? So one of the fun things about cyber insurance, because the agents aren't that great at it either, is generally if you bring it up before anybody else does, at that point your client sees you as the expert, right? It's like, oh, Will actually sat here and talked to me about this. Oh yeah, thanks for this forum. Let me call Will. He just told me I was going to be expecting this. So just bringing those conversations up. I mentioned defensive measures. You want to have those conversations so that your client, even if you don't want to deal with it, you throw it over the fence to FifthWall or another agent, that kind of thing. But bring it up so that way, whenever that conversation does come up, they're not sitting there and somebody else doesn't have their ear. They're going to talk to you. They're always going to bring you in on that conversation. So, we talked earlier about we need. Good.
As we're talking about this is great. As we're talking about this, one of the things we really want, if we can hammer home one point today, it's flipping that switch to being proactive around cyber insurance. Because one of the issues a lot of MSPs are running into are saying, hey, I'm not really thinking about cyber insurance, at least not in detail, until my client brings me a renewal form. And usually their client is bringing that renewal form like 5 days before it's supposed to review, and they're saying, hey y'all, I need EDR apparently on all my endpoints like tomorrow. So that's one of the things that we want to help alleviate some of the pain around that as well. So when you start to incorporate it somewhat regularly into your client conversations, now you're moving away. You're taking the reins, and we're going to talk all about that. But it is a really important factor, and I'm hoping that as you walk away from this today, we have that understanding of, hey, how can I maybe start implementing a few steps here so that I'm not caught off guard when my client brings me their cyber renewal?
Yeah, exactly. So one of the most important pieces is looking for that expiration date. So we need to know, when does that policy renew? What's our target date? Because then we can work backwards on a bunch of important stuff. So sometimes this is an awkward conversation. So I mentioned earlier, we have some kind of battle tested strategies on that. Maybe hopefully you have the trust of the client to where you go in, you're like, hey, cyber insurance is an important thing. Can I just get a copy of your policy to have on file? And they go, Will, you're the best MSP ever. Here you go. No problem. No questions asked. Real world, we know that doesn't happen usually. So they're going to sit there and go, okay, why do you need a copy of it? That kind of thing. A couple important reasons that you do. So the first one is that claim information, right? So say hypothetical world, your client's network gets ransomed. All right, you have this conversation with them. You're like, well, look, your network may get ransomed. We need a copy of it for the claim. Well, I got a paper copy printed out, or this, that, and the other. It's okay, but let me integrate that into our incident response plan as well, right? I just need that information on the claim, the policy number. How do we file a claim? Which is surprisingly, a lot of carriers use email addresses only, which blows my mind. It's not like a hotline; it's a email hotline. And then also, when does that claim, or when does the policy expire? Sorry, guys, I can't speak today. When does that policy expire? Because then I know at that point I need to come back to you, Will, and I'm going to have to ask you, hey, I bet you got a new policy. Can you please give me the updated information? And so then take that and file it away in your systems, because that way if something does happen with the client, oh, I can't find my policy, hey, Becky, can you get it for me, please? I remember I gave it to you. I'm in a panic. Great. You're their MSP. You're organized. You have an incident response plan, the whole 9 yards, right? That's an important part of it. But the added advantage at that point, we now have that policy expiration date. So great. Why do we care? What are we going to do with it? One thing is make your life a little bit easier. So Will mentioned earlier, right? It's like 5 days in advance. Hey, here's this form. We need you to fill it out. Most of the carriers are letting people renew their policy 30 days in advance. So give yourself some time. Whenever that 30 days rolls around, you still haven't seen that form to fill out, pick up the phone, call your client, just say, hey, we had a trigger date that we need to get the new policy from you in 30 days. I just wanted to check. I know we're going to have to help you fill this form out. Have you guys gotten anything from that yet? Oh, no, my agent hasn't done anything yet. Oh, could you reach out to him, and see? That would give us some more time to sit down, look closely at it with you, that kind of thing. Give it a push. Will always says to me is agents are lazy. So if you go and you bring it to them and it's like, hey guys, it's time to do this, at that point, the client's asking for it, that'll get things going a little bit quicker. And it gives you time because we'll talk about some of this stuff. There's post-bind subjectivities and all that you can run into on a renewal. So there's these issues come up to where it's like, oh, great, we have, we did a port scan and we saw this and you're having to negotiate that kind of stuff. So again, giving yourself that full 30 days is super helpful to let you be able to get through everything as part of that renewal. Then you're not rushing. If they do get hit with something where it's like, oh, we need, you got to deploy EDR. You're a high-risk manufacturing company. We got to have EDR deployed for us to renew the policy. Wouldn't you rather have 3 weeks rather than 3 days kind of situation? So again, that part is about making your life easier.
Dustin,
yeah, good.
Before going on, because you brought up organization. Mel put a comment in the chat that says we're organized ? And regardless of if that's a joke or not, I do think what's some very clear. So as someone who is actively doing this for your MSP, saying, hey, I want to incorporate this, I want my clients, what are some easy steps for organizing around this? So like, all right, you got your client policy, you could just leave it in your email inbox and then it's just sitting there. And then when it's time for this meeting, I'll find it and search for it or whatever. But what are some means that you're using? I don't mean tools specifically, but what are some approaches saying, hey, how do I get organized around this? Like, I'm collecting the policy, I'm pulling out, like you said, the policy number, claims info. How are you storing that? And like, what are you doing to, how are you referencing that at renewal time? Do you make, you get that new copy of the policy, the policy number is changing, the carrier might even change, the phone number changes, it can get chaotic. So what kind of approaches are you taking there to stay organized around it?
Yeah, a couple different options. I'll speak from personal experience and what we've seen some other MSPs doing as well. So for my MSP, we have things documented in a couple different places. We're a ConnectWise managed shop, so we've actually started building a cyber insurance configuration now. So information will go in there. You can do those built-in expiration dates. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that we have an IR plan for every single client, because we definitely don't. But the ones we do have specifics where we've put that information in there as well. So the client has a copy of it. We have a copy of it too. I like Rob's comment. I use my client insurance policies as wallpaper in the office. And then Joanne actually has, I was going to say, seeing other MSPs, we don't use IT Glue. But the best answer that I've seen is having it as an asset in IT Glue or Hoodoo as well. And again, you can set those expiration dates, workflow off of that kind of thing. And then one other piece is, there we go. I swear Mel isn't an audience plant, but one other good one is if you were using something like Lifecycle Insights, doing that annual risk assessment, you can kind of build that around. I personally love, and we've seen a lot of MSPs do this as well with success, is build that risk assessment around their cyber insurance renewal date, right? So of course, we're all sitting down after we do our QBRs exactly every quarter perfectly. We're sitting down and doing kind of that annual risk assessment. Use that as a time, tie that to cyber insurance. So like if they renew on June 1st, schedule that annual risk assessment around April, because you can tie all this into it. So that's another really great thing about cyber insurance, one of the few great things about cyber insurance. But you can use it as kind of that, a little bit of a stick with the client to say, it's not just me sitting here saying you need 24/7 EDR. Look, insurance is asking for it also, right? And we got to get ready, because I know you guys are going to be doing this renewal here in June 1st. So can we get this in, the next 60 days, or even better, building it up over the year, right? We've talked about it in this QBRs, that kind of thing. So that annual risk assessment, using something like LCI, you run through that and then build, sorry guys, cyber insurance, yet another framework. It's a pain in the butt. Luckily, it's one of the simplest ones. But, here's these 7 to 10 things that they're looking for. Build that into your risk assessments. And then that way you can kind of do those gaps and say, hey, this stuff isn't in place. You really want to have this for your insurance renewal if it's going to get you a better rate, allow you to be renewed, things like that. So bunch of different good strategies for organizing it, but having it somewhere besides on the client's network is important.
Dustin, Will, question for you. Of the folks you talk to, what rough percentage would you say are actually talking to their clients about their cyber insurance policies?
I can speak to that one. So I wouldn't, percentages are hard. I would say probably the majority of people I talk to, the majority of MSPs I'm talking to are currently being reactive when it comes to cyber insurance. So every MSP, 100% of the ones I talk to are talking about cyber insurance. The real question is, when is it coming up? And a lot of them are being reactive in the sense that they're not really thinking about it until that policy renewal form comes across their desk. And that's what's causing the major headaches and the issues and a lot of this non-renewal stuff. So I would say 100% are talking about it. Probably only about 10% are actually being proactive around it.
And that's just of the ones you're talking to whose clients are actually bringing their policies to them.
Yes.
I have to believe that there's a whole lot of MSPs out there who aren't having the conversation at all and whose clients are blindly filling out forms, not knowing what they have or don't have.
And that is part of the danger of being reactive around this. If you're reactive, then the clients who see you as an asset for helping them with those forms are going to come with the forms. But the ones who are just like, just check the boxes, we're good, they're actually now risking having a claim denied because they misrepresented. They didn't lie intentionally. That's fraud. They misrepresented themselves on those forms, and the carrier would come in and say, hey, look, you're not getting coverage. And that's because you had an incident. It was because you didn't have MFA, but you said you did, so we're not coming in and filling this, right? So that's one of the issues we run into a lot. So if you're proactive around this, we have partners who are now saying like, hey, we're requiring this. We're requiring cyber insurance from our clients. There's other ones saying, hey, we strongly recommend it. Whatever that approach is, at least it's moving in that direction where it's saying, hey, we want to, and we want to make sure, and to kind of Dustin's point before, having a copy of the policy is important for a couple of reasons. And one of the biggest pieces here is, I think, as an MSP, it's imperative to your business to know that if a client has an incident, that they are actually going to receive not just coverage, but good coverage from an incident. There's a lot of things out there right now that are posing as cyber policies, specifically calling themselves policies, that are actually like tack on, add on endorsements. We talked about that last week. Like there's all different shapes and forms. But the real question is, if my client were to suffer an incident, could their business survive? And that's I think really important for two reasons. One, you care about your clients, and two, if you helped them get a good policy that protected them, they're not going to be like, oh, well, my MSP told me I should have insurance. I went and bought it. It did nothing. They're the ones who provided the controls, so I'm just going to sue them now. Like it can get really ugly. And we've had a lot of clients who have had incidents, but because the MSP helped them get good insurance, they're like, oh, thank you for doing that. It helped us survive. So it is imperative.
Something you said earlier too made me think. One other danger zone that I've seen a handful of times, both personally and secondhand, co-managed IT. So I'd be curious in the comments how many people are loving or hating co-managed, or doing it or not doing it. But the internal IT folks can be an issue on this as well. So there's one I saw recently where the guy just kind of went through and was just like, yes, right? And it managed, luckily, to make it back to the MSP, but it didn't line up because the internal guys didn't realize the security the MSP was providing, right? Or even if you're an MSSP. So that's one of those things to where, again, you want to make sure you get ahead of it, because that way when it comes up, they're not handing it to the internal guy and say, oh yeah, fill this out, that they're grabbing you and saying, okay, let's run through this, let's discuss this. So again, you want to make sure that you're seen as the expert, right? The trusted advisor on it. And by having that conversation, to Will's point, the proactive versus reactive, anytime you're reactive on insurance, you're not the trusted advisor, right? You got to be the one that brings it up. That way, whenever the CFO gets the renewal documentation, that they go, oh yeah, I need to talk to Will. He brought this up with me. So,
two things I want to address. First, Rob just put a thing in there about the two Spider-Mans pointing at each other. I literally posted that as a meme this morning. I think that's really funny on LinkedIn. But something going back to what we were talking about how insurance is another form of compliance, right? It's another framework. We put in there that it's an evolving standard of compliance. It's an evolving framework. So for those of you in here who aren't, you have a lot of you're kind of focusing in the SMB market, right? And you don't have a ton of clients who are required to follow a particular framework. This can be a great way to say, hey, let's at least get you to this point. We're following this framework because you know what? Yes, it's a framework, but it's also one that next year there's going to be more controls on there. So you have now another opportunity to better secure your client. If you have clients who are dragging their heels, they're saying, hey, I don't want any of these things. You're just trying to sell me on stuff. Well, now when you're using the leverage of insurance, you're saying, actually, you need to be this tall to ride this ride just to even get a policy. So let's get those things in place and make sure you're a good risk. You know what? Next year, going to be honest with you, probably going to be more, but at least you're at that point. And each year we can review that and make sure you're there.
So there's a couple of questions in chat I want to make sure that we address. Arnold has asked, was there something that defined incident? I get ransomware, physical extraction of PII, destruction of physical equipment or premise. Is there some nuance or definitive list?
The policy definitions, which is a terrible response. I know, I'm sorry. But when you look at a policy, it's going to very clearly define what they consider a, they'll probably have their own term for it. They may say incident, they may say breach, they may say cyber event. It's important to look and see what's actually covered under that. Usually it's pretty broad. It's saying some sort, because a policy, a good policy, will have coverage for lots of things. It wouldn't just be ransomware, right? They have coverage for social engineering. They have coverage for invoice manipulation, credit card fraud, but they have coverage for gift card scams, all that kind of stuff. That's all covered on a policy. So it wouldn't just be, hey, here's, you had to have had a ransomware attack for this policy to kick in, unless it's a like ransomware only policy, right? So it's knowing the definition of what they would consider an incident based on that policy.
So what I'm hearing you say is that it's really important that you have copies of all of your clients' cyber policies so that you know how they define said incident.
And take it a step further. I know you don't have to do this, but call their broker and say, so what's actually covered on this? Curious what they would say, but ask the question. I mean, you want to know.
Yeah, one of the infuriating things coming into this industry, cyber specifically, is like if you have car insurance, like it's, you know what's covered, right? So you have comprehensive collision, liability, all that. It's very standard. I can go to 20 different car insurance carriers and get basically the same thing. Cyber insurance is still kind of the Wild West on that, to where it's all, like Will said, there's like a set of it, but all of them are slightly different. So you go to 10 different carriers and you'll get 10 slightly different policies on it. So there really is, I don't know many people that use the insurance agent for their auto these days, right? Because you just go online to Progressive or Allstate or whatever and you buy it. Cyber, you really do need that expertise on the policy side of it, right? I'm not even going to touch the actual cybersecurity side of it and the industry's knowledge, but from the policy standpoint, there are a lot of little details and they do change policy to policy. So that is super important. All right. You had another question you wanted to hit, Will?
Not me. Becky was reading some of the questions out. I don't know did we get to all of them, Becky?
Sorry, I keep muting because apparently they're working on the air conditioning in the hotel room next to me.
So, gotta love that.
Of all the times, guys, they just got back from lunch. Looks like we've got a couple here. Jim in Q&A asked, where can we find a list of carriers that provide true cyber risk policies?
I mean, I can give you the salesy answer. If you partner with FifthWall, we can send you a list. But I mean, you can do honestly, you can talk to local agents. I'm sure Google comprehensive cyber carriers, and you'll see comprehensive is what you want. I mean, I can just kind of start
standalone is really an important thing too.
Yeah.
If it's attached to another policy, so if it's like here's cyber as part of your general liability, it's probably garbage.
Yeah. Dustin, real quick too, based on the, some of this, I'm just looking, there's one here about, and I don't, not to talk about a particular brand or whatever. It's just specifically saying, hey, we can resell cyber through Kaseya, but I'm not really sold on that. I'm not sure if Kaseya's program, but I'm probably going to go ahead and say you're either not reselling insurance or it's not an insurance policy, right? Because you can't sell insurance if you're not licensed. Like you can't solicit insurance. But if it's a warranty or something like that, then you can.
Oh, so okay, let's go back. I forget who asked it.
It was
apologies
David.
I don't know if it's David's question. There's another one I saw earlier though. Oh no, I'm sorry. You're right. All right, David. So I'm getting your question now. All right. So as MSPs of ours, are we able to resell, get commissions, spiffs, or as indirect referral partners? So the answer is no, from us. So there may be others that tell you the answer yes, but saying as somebody who went and got his insurance license finally, legally you cannot take money. So don't get yourself in trouble, please. The State Department of Insurance will come after you. And it will be after you for accepting that money without a license. But no, so without an insurance license, you can't get paid on it. So the question is, how do we make money at it? There's two answers to that. The first one is sell a lot more cybersecurity. 24/7 EDR is coincidentally a really hot topic with insurance carriers right now. Funny enough that we're on this webinar. And then the other one is that we've seen, and this takes a little bit more work, so to speak, effort to do it. But whenever we were talking earlier about that annual security assessment, right? So take that and bundle it into like an insurance readiness assessment, and then charge your client for it. So you take that, it's like, we're getting everything ready. We're going to do, this framework comparison. We're going to do a gap analysis, that kind of thing. And that's that annual, okay, as part of your services as an MSP, we're protecting you and stuff, but cybersecurity changes, right? Regulation changes. So every year we need to kind of set, where have those goalposts moved? Where do we need to plan over this next year to get caught back up? That kind of thing. We've seen a lot of MSPs doing that. And it's a great sales tool also. So, here at so-and-so MSP, we can be your cyber insurance readiness partner. Now you're not selling insurance, but you are selling the services to get them ready. So that's the two pieces. To David and anybody else who's asked that, how do I make money at it? Don't look at going after the commissions. I mean, you could go and get licensed and you can, but this should be a gold mine for everybody on getting the right security tools in place. So we've sat for how many years now and just, plead and scream at clients, turn on MFA, turn on MFA. And then the first minute that insurance says you need it, they're going, okay, like, why the hell didn't you guys have this on for us yet, right? What told you the last 3 years? Well, please do it now. So turn cyber insurance into that stick, right? So getting them to do what they need to, selling more cyber security tools, and then also on those assessments. That's a good annual reason for you to be able to do a quick project that's taking a life cycle. You kind of put everything in there for that module, and then just go through the client, do a quick assessment, and sit down with them. And maybe that's your Q4 QBR. So those are your answers on how do I make money at it. Or go suffer through getting licensed, registered as an agency. You guys are welcome to reach out to me if you want. It's a lot of paperwork, but I can explain. I just sell more cybersecurity.
Dustin, I was this close to putting the "wait, you guys are getting paid" meme in this slide presentation, and I didn't do it, and that would have been so good right now.
Perfect timing.
I digress.
Another gentleman, Ronald, just asked in Q&A as well about a provider's coverage breakdown comparison chart.
Yeah.
The
I
answer
mean,
there is-
I could plug FifthWall again, but I'm trying not to. From an actual carrier perspective, I don't think you're going to find carriers comparing their coverages with other carriers, just because it's not really something they'll do. That would be something that an agent would put together for you, or should put together for you. But that would be on a case-by-case basis. I mean, I can tell you really briefly here that coverages, not what Dustin was saying before about the cyber insurance being the Wild West. I mean, the coverages not only change across carriers, they also change within the same carrier. I mean, like Beasley, for example, was the gold standard for a bunch of years. And then there was this one year where they released their coverage form and they took off a bunch of things and they changed a bunch of things. And we were like, what the heck happened? And that's just seems to be, the carrier changes based on the risks that they have to pay out for and based on what they saw on their actuarial tables the years before. So they're always changing those forms up. So it's not just this, hey, here's this base thing. And the reality is, if you shared that with your client 2 months later, it could change. So it's, yeah. That'd be nice though.
All right, jumping back in the QBR conversation. So another one too is I put on here, make sure bring it up in the first conversation, right? So great, we've signed a new client. We kind of go through our first 60 days of onboarding. Now we're going to the first QBR. Hit that stuff as early as you can. So one of fun insurance trivia that I've learned working with Will is most policies renew on June 1st or January 1st. So statistically, your clients are going to end up on one of those dates. So if you're onboarding somebody in April, you got a good chance that in 60 days you're going to be dealing with a insurance renewal. You don't want to get blindsided by that, and they're going, "Oh, we need 24/7 EDR. Why isn't that in place, guys?" And you're like, "Oh, we haven't talked to you about that yet, right?" So making yourself look good, that kind of thing. Hit that in that first QBR, because you don't know when that renewal date's going to happen. Again, you don't want to get blindsided. That's one of the biggest lessons here. insurance agents, other MSPs are making your life harder around insurance. So take those easy steps to make it happen. The other nice part on that then is, so we brought it up. Great. We have our, let's use that April example again, right? So, okay, cool. We just found out it's actually January 1st. So now I have 8 months to sit there, talk to the client about what we want to do, build a budget, keep revisiting, keep having these conversations. It gives you a good roadmap. And then it also, like from the sales perspective, where if things are open-ended, I don't know if any of you guys ever like tried to talk to, you're trying to get somebody landed as a customer at your MSP, right? They're interested, but there's no like hard anything that's made them do it. So it's like, oh yeah, I'd like to move. And it's just like, that's horrible to deal with. Versus if there's something going on of, oh yeah, Becky, we'd love to sign up. Like I have to have something in place by, July 1st because we have these compliance requirements to meet, right? Now it's putting some pressure on it. They have to make a decision. They can't just kick back and do it when they feel like it. So that insurance piece helps on that as well too, because now there's a date on the wall. We're saying this is when we got to have this stuff figured out by. This is where our security budget has to line up with. So that's a good, not just for you, but it also, a lot of business owners, myself included, appreciate that kind of thing to where it's like, okay, now we got to be decisive on things. Maybe it is decisive to a no, but at least we're forcing that conversation. We're forcing ourselves to make decisions on it. So.
Mel had a really good point in chat of a great discovery question. When is your cyber insurance renewing? It also, I have to believe, would make you look more knowledgeable if you were going in with so to make sure that our stack lines up with your current security needs based on your cyber insurance policy, let's review that together, make sure that we fill everything that you need. Gives you an opportunity for upsell or to talk about why your stack is better, all of those pieces and parts, but might help you win that new client as well.
Ryan just asked a question about, if you can't solicit for the sales of policies, are you able to promote FifthWall partnership? I'm not going to touch the FifthWall partnership part, but something important for you guys to know. Appreciate you. Really important thing, because that's one of the biggest questions that we get is like, what can I talk about? What can I talk about? So I think I've talked about this now on all 3 of our presentations we've done here with Huntress, but 2 important things, right? And actually, I'm going to say 3. I'm going to tweak it a little bit, Will. Let's see how this goes. So you can't talk about specific policies, right? So your customer has that policy. You can talk about the security controls and stuff, but don't advise on the carrier, don't advise anything, right? You're the cybersecurity expert, you're not the insurance person. Don't talk about specific carriers. So there was like 2 years ago, there's an MSP vendor that brought up an actual carrier form, and it was these 2 guys and they were riffing on it on a live stream. That is not cool with regulation, right? So no specific carriers either. And then the last one is don't talk numbers. So, we've touched on the sublimit stuff, right? Is there a ransomware sublimit? Oh yeah, it's $250,000. Just leave numbers out of it. And so if you follow those 3, I used to always say 2, but it's really also the individual policy. Follow those 3 rules and you'll be totally safe on it. So you can come in and say, cyber insurance is generally looking for 24/7 EDR. You don't want to come in and say Beasley is looking for 24/7 EDR. Correct. I can say that now because I got licensed. Or that 24/7 EDR will help with your, not being limited to a 250K ransomware sublimit, that kind of thing. So generalities are awesome. Just don't bring up specific numbers, carrier names, and don't talk about an individual policy.
Yeah, and that feeds into something Paul asked before too. Just avoid anything specific and avoid anything that's a guarantee. You're saying, hey, we want to get you aligned with what carriers are looking for. I can tell you now, the reality is there's more than just security that carriers look at when it comes to getting a policy. Yes, they want to see good security, but they're also basing their eligibility requirements and pricing off of the industry and the revenue. So those are the other 2 really big factors there. So if you get all the security in place, but then you bring it to an agent who only has access to certain carriers, and none of those carriers want to take on the risk, that's not your fault. You did everything you can do. Just stay away from, you will get cyber insurance if you do this. It's the difference between being like pre-qualified versus pre-approved, right? If you get pre-qualified for a mortgage, the bank's basically saying, oh yeah, everything looks good. But if you're pre-approved, they're literally saying, oh yeah, we'll do this, right? So there's the difference there. Just think of it kind of in that regard. Stay away from promising your clients, if you work with me, you will get cyber insurance. But rather say, hey, look, we're going to do everything we can to make you considered a good risk by the carriers. And that's a great way to promote your own business, even in discovery and prospecting, those kind of things. If you're someone who aligns themselves with saying, hey, look, we really try to make it a mission of ours to simplify cyber insurance for our clients. I know that's a big pain point. That can be a selling point. We're not going to guarantee anything, but we can help.
Yeah, and I'm going to say not even a good, that's a great selling point, because right now, think of the suffering that your clients are going through with cyber insurance, right? These forms are a pain in the butt, that kind of thing. Like, just by being on this webinar, you're probably in the top, 10 to 20% of MSPs. So think of all of your not so great competitors locally, right? So that client's probably suffering through cyber insurance on their own. So now whenever you come in, you're just like that knight in shining armor, that it's okay, somebody will actually help me understand and fill out these forms and explain the security questions to me. You just, put yourself in the top of the list from saving them from that pain of insurance, especially if they just went through a renewal or if in the thick of one.
So this is a 3-slide slide deck, and we're still on the first one. So we're going to move. I've never spent 40 minutes on a slide before, but I'm about it. All right. So planning and budgeting around security and cyber insurance, Dustin.
Yeah. Okay. So, and we've touched on some of this already. So, you don't want to get hit last minute with not just the form to fill out, but then these carriers come back and they have these, they call them subjectivities, where it's oh yeah, we'd be happy to give you a policy, but, right? Or even worse is my favorite insurance term that I learned from Will is post-bind subjectivities, which means that, oh, here's your policy, Becky. It starts, on the 29th, but also if you don't do this, we're going to cancel it, right? We just found this on a scam, that kind of thing. So give yourself that long runway to that way you're not rushing in. The worst part on the MSP is like that last minute, this has to be done, right? We hate when clients do it to us. Ensure that you're not letting them do that to you. Ensure that their agent's not going to be able to do that to you, right? Push them a little bit, that 30 days in advance. And what we've really started saying these days now is start talking to them about it 90 days in advance. So one of the things you can do, hopefully through us at FifthWall, but if you get a good partner, local, that kind of thing also, is stay abreast of what's going on in the insurance industry, new requirements coming up. So I keep mentioning 24/7 EDR. It's kind of a joke because we're on the Huntress webinar. So, what else does Huntress do that's awesome? That's one of the things. But that is something that the carriers seriously are looking for. Vulnerability management is another piece right now that's real hot, is being able to scan. Are you doing it regularly? How are you resolving those? So there's certain things that are coming up more and more that will sit in there all day, and it's seeing like, oh yeah, the high risk guys are getting hit with this now, right? So we know that's coming for everyone else. So the nice thing on insurance is like we got this awesome crystal ball that's called high risk customers. And on those, they start requiring this stuff. So right now, again, the EDR piece is required on high risk customers. So we know that's going to trickle down to everybody else in the next 18 months. So there's a great roadmap there that comes up. And again, throughout the year, as these insurers are, working to improve their requirements, we know what's coming on that. They start asking, ooh, we saw this on 2 forums. Now we see it on 20. It's like, all right, that's coming everywhere. Let's get it on our LODA. Let's get it on our roadmap for everybody. So again, just throughout the year, and that helps give you a good security roadmap as well. Maybe not from the, I'm saying again, insurance doesn't always know what they're doing. Maybe you're like, oh, that's not the right technology control. Oh, I already had that 2 years ago. But that's going to be coming up on these apps. You're going to need to have an answer for it. Bring it up with the client now, address it earlier. That way, they don't get that and say, why don't you have, oh, they told me I need zero trust. What the heck is zero trust? Like, well, it's a marketing term, but again, you're prepared for it, right? You're having those discussions.
Yeah. And, based on that, something that just popped in my head, Chelsea, Becky, just please remind me after this to send over a list as well of what are considered high risk industries by insurance carriers. Because if, as an MSP, if you look through that list and you're like, oh, I do a lot with these, that's another opportunity for you there. Because now it's shifting from just, we need to have these couple of basic controls to carriers are going to want a lot more information. So it adds, they're not just looking for a segregated weekly backup solution. They're looking for immutable backups, untouchable. Like it ideally you're all doing immutable already, but the reality is they'll start to ask those more specific questions, more defined questions. And to Dustin's point, they start to ask about greater security. There's some carriers who are looking, depending on the industry, they may say, hey, look, someone who's a manufacturer who's bringing in $500 million a year, we definitely want to see things like a PAM tool integrated or something like that, right? So it's knowing that there are other things a carrier might ask for. So, and the reason this is also beneficial, getting ahead of it 90 days out is kind of twofold here is, yeah, it's really important because you don't want to have to implement EDR on every endpoint at the last second, but also if you get all the baseline requirements in place and then it goes to the carrier, they might come back and say, hey, actually, you need this too. And now you're not doing that and everything else. You've already got the baseline stuff in place. You have a runway now. I can just tell you, carriers will typically quote 30 to 45 days out. So an agent's capable of doing that by that point. They don't need to wait until the day before, right? So but you need to take the reins here and you need to be the one doing it. Because otherwise you can't blame the agent. The agent's working on 7 other lines of business per client. So they're focused on a whole broad range of things where really this is the important one for you.
Rick gave us a softball. Will, do you have a model of the security roadmap that we can customize for our business?
Yeah.
So we did, we put together an Excel spreadsheet just as kind of a, I mean, it has the content on there, but just as a starting point for you guys. Again, earlier Lifecycle Insights came up. We've seen a lot of MSPs using that. We actually have a module that we built in there for you guys. So it's free. If you're in Lifecycle, go look into the pre-built where they have like all the NIST and CMMC stuff. And there's an insurance one in there. But yeah, so Rick, we do have, I don't know if we can reshare it on this chat, but it would have been covered in the first session. That shows you here's the current core controls is what we call them, that are kind of the table stakes. And then here's the advanced controls as you want to go to that next level with your clients.
Yep. Chelsea
again,
has that too. So anyone on this call, just ask. I'm sure they can send it over to you. I sent it over last week or the beginning of this week or something.
Yep. And we'll make sure. So at the end of this, we'll send the recording for all 3 webinars together, plus take homes, these guides, all of that. Otherwise, if for some reason you are not getting those emails, I'm going to put my email in the chat right now. Please don't sign me up for random email blasts. Don't do that to me, but I will, I'll make sure that you get that stuff and we'll make sure that we include all of the different pieces and parts in that final email. And this will be on our webpage, I would imagine the next 2 weeks as well. It'll be on the Huntress webpage. Cat facts. Yeah, somebody signed my text up for that once. Thanks, John.
That's actually hilarious.
It's cat facts are wonderful to do to people.
Oh, I didn't realize Becky just put her email. I thought that was someone else doing it just to troll the chat.
I did it.
And also, if you already are a partner of FifthWall, I mean, we have our application too that kind of updates in real time on these security controls, just because we're constantly evaluating those things. So if you are a partner and you haven't been introduced to that, just send me an email after this because we definitely need to show you that. It would definitely help. But the tool we sent over will help. Lifecycle Insights. There's lots of options, but I think the whole goal here is don't look at last year's data and say my client is ready for cyber insurance this year because it probably changed. And that's the point I really want to hit home. I think I shared this last week, but for those of you who weren't on last week, I had an agent I was working with, and they had a client who did everything that their carrier told them they needed to do in 2020, what is it, 23? So 2022, to get all the right controls in place so that they would be considered a good risk for that year. And then the renewal came up and the carrier said, we're not keeping you. And it turned into this whole ordeal where I had to teach them all what MFA was and all this other kind of stuff. But the reality is just because last year they were considered a good risk, and that's honestly, this is an important piece to teach your clients is, hey, you know what? Just because you're ready for insurance this year does not mean you're good forever. You know, it's not like you drove this car and you don't have to change anything now. Every year, every 6 months, you're going to get that renewal policy in the mail with your insurance card you put in your glove box. That's not how this is going to work. Like, we have to constantly be reviewing your posture to make sure it aligns.
Right.
Set that expectation early. So, yep.
For the final slide.
Renewal time. We've been talking about all this stuff, but Yep.
So again, rehashing a little bit of it is, keep in mind, Will talked a little bit about the whys earlier, but the agent isn't going to be the most fully engaged on it usually. So it's a good chance for you to get in the driver's seat on it. Go in, talk about it, the controls, right? Hey, we know the renewal's coming up. And I mean, you guys are out there seeing all this stuff going on in cybersecurity. It's a good conversation starter, right? Cyber insurance is going to be the driver, but it's not ever going to be setting the standard on everything, right? I generally what I see is kind of like 12 to 18 months behind of what's going on in the real cybersecurity world, but use it as that tool to have those conversations, to get them talking with you. And then again, there's a lot of weird hybrid stuff going on right now in the sense of insurance companies buying MSSPs. So, it's like, oh yeah, of course, if you come use, our tools and this, that, and the other, then you get a discount, or I really want you to sit down and talk to our guys. One of the carriers who shall not be named, as part of their policy, will give you a 1-hour sit down with a Symantec sales engineer. The jokes write themselves on that. It makes me feel old hearing that. But it's an active thing that's going on. So you got to be a little bit defensive on that, because traditionally it's been, as MSPs, we're the ones that are sitting there that are the trusted advisor on that. Where, they have their lawyer, they have their CPA, then they have their IT guy, which is us, the MSP. Now with the insurance piece, again, auto really hasn't changed. There's not much of a discussion, the property, that kind of stuff. It's boring. They just kind of do it. They check it, move on. Cyber is constantly changing, evolving. So where they're having to talk to the agent, it's a more in-depth conversation. The agent does have to advise, unless you get in there first and start advising them on it. So the sooner you're able to have that conversation, you avoid them talking to another, risk advisor expert in depth on that. So,
Yeah.
Good.
No, I think this last bullet point we've said this a lot today, but it is really crucial. You need to get behind this, and you need to control the conversation, not because the agent knows what they're doing or doesn't know what they're doing. Some do, some don't. That's just the reality of cyber. But you need to control the conversation from the place that you are the trusted cybersecurity advisor here. The insurance industry is not keeping up with cyber insurance because it's so different. So cyber insurance almost is more aligned with cybersecurity, and because of that, you're probably more in the know than the agent is as to what needs to be done. And I'm willing to bet the majority of you are spending more time on cyber insurance apps than the agents are. And that's probably what's going on. So because of that, just make sure you're establishing yourself as the authority here, knowing, hey, I know what controls are needed. Look, the renewal's coming up in 90 days. Let's talk about that, just so that when that renewal does come up, it's smooth. It just saves a lot of time, saves a lot of headache and hassle.
Yeah, Becky tried to get Will to give some numbers on stuff earlier. I'm going to say probably like half the MSPs that end up reaching out to us, Will, it feels like are, reacting in the sense of it's like, oh shoot, I just had this thing hit. Like, can you guys help me out with it, kind of thing. We do get a lot of proactive, but it's still just a constant, if you're not embracing it, hit it head on. Don't get blindsided, because a lot of these times stuff, you're getting hit with surprises, or the agents bringing stuff in, things like that.
Well, that was the number I gave before. I think it's more like 90% are being reactive.
There you go. Even better.
I would say a good chunk of MSPs come to us because they specifically have like an immediate client need where, oh, this is really annoying, and this was the tipping point for me, and I'm just going to reach out to FifthWall or reach out to someone who knows what they're doing because this is annoying to me, right? So that is a big influx of like brand new MSP partners. But a big part of what we do is help to train you, like we're doing right now. We just want to train you up to say, how do I be the authority on this, be proactive on this, so that I'm not caught off guard? Because really that's what you want to avoid here.
Awesome Q&A question from Anonymous. Is anybody still using Norton products? I think their whole customer list from LifeLock got breached. So yeah. I don't know on any of the IT side if they actually have security products that are widely deployed or in use at this point. But LifeLock, I found out Norton owned them because of whenever that news of that breach came out. Kevin has a good one. By the way, folks, we're kind of hitting the end of this. So if you do have additional questions, please drop them in the chat or the question and answer. So Kevin asked, sometimes the cyber insurance wants to be the first phone call and doesn't want the MSP to take any action. If the client has XDR and it starts remediating automatically, does that go against the policy since they don't want remediation? Fun story time. So I get to sit on both sides of the fence here from insurance and MSP world. So if you guys go onto the Huntress page for Process Insights, the EDR, there's a video there, and you will get to see my MSP business partner, Anthony Cabral. We were a alpha tester for the EDR product, and battle tested it pretty quickly. It actually ended up, we had a good 4-year run at our MSP before we had a serious breach. And Huntress hit the isolate button about 5 minutes after the attack started, and that did end up turning into an insurance claim for the client's cyber insurance. So the important thing on that is what the insurance carrier doesn't want to see you do is you can isolate and contain is the phrasing on it, right? So you can pull. That's what I love on Sentinel-1 does it. A lot of the other EDR providers also where you can isolate from the network. That is the best feature to have from an insurance perspective, because at that point, the assumption is, and statistically it's super true, is you probably don't have good logging. So insurance wants you to just isolate rather than shutting down, rebooting, that sort of stuff, because then they're losing important forensics information. Because what's going to happen if insurance comes in, let's say you have a medical office with 10,000 patient records, you don't have logs to be able to show where that attacker hit, where they went, that kind of thing. From the legal standpoint, insurance goes, okay, all 10,000 of those records were exposed, right? So at that point, the cost just skyrocketed. If they can come in and do forensics proving definitively, ooh, they only got to these, 50 records in this share right here, then that puts everybody in a lot better position. So again, to Kevin's thing, isolate and contain. Do not start restoring service. I'm not an IR guy, so I'm not even going to go into it. Why, you've heard the horror stories. We restored from backups 3 days ago. The attackers were still in, stuff like that. But from an insurance perspective, isolate and contain. That's all you want to do. That's all they're going to let you do at that point. And then, as alongside of that, so, oh, geez, there's a incident going on. Becky just called us. The network's under attack. We'll go open a claim. I'm going to go isolate and contain, right? That's it. Then you sit back. You're not in the driver's seat anymore.
Can I give a little bit of a breather?
Please.
Here is, you're going to get a lot of pressure from your client if they're suffering an incident saying, hey, you know what? You're my MSP. Your job, the reason I pay you is to get me back up online. So get me back up online. I need to be able to do my business. Well, if they have a good insurance policy in place, a big part of a cyber insurance policy is business interruption. There's coverage in a policy that literally says for all that downtime where forensics has to come in, where all of the investigation has to happen, and the legal forensics and understanding who needs to be notified, during that time until we can get your system back and restored, we're covering you for that loss of income. That is a big part, and it's usually up to the full limit. I think we talked about it a little bit last week. So even though you're going to get the pressure, if you have that confidence of knowing your client has a good policy, you can say, look, we have to follow the steps here. But rest assured, your policy should cover you for this. Just talk to the insurance agent on it or carrier on it. I think.
I was going to say, I think we covered all 3 of our slides at this point.
We have one more question.
Yeah.
In the Q&A. So are carriers likely to start requiring having services that automatically respond to M365 events like Huntress is beta testing now? So do you see business email compromise starting to be
So BEC has become a substantial source of claims. Will may know the statistics, but it's something like it overtook it in quantity and cost, I think, last year over ransom, if I remember right, in the insurance industry. Don't quote me on that, please.
I'm not sharing statistics anymore, because then I have to give my source, and then I find out I was off by 1%, and I look like a fool.
But no, that's something that's coming up. So remember earlier that I said about the insurance industry, being 12 to 18 months behind. So right now is we're seeing, still major reaction. They're kind of sorting out the damage from Log4j. So now we're starting to see, I would bet that most carriers don't even know what MDR is, but we are starting to see, SOC, do you have, one of the things that I really love is there was an MSP that I was talking to the one time, and I said about, do you guys have EDR? Oh yeah, of course. Well, do you have, 24/7 SOC? And the guy goes, no, but we have an 8x5 SOC. So I was like, all right, like, dude, that's not, the hackers don't go home. It's like, oh, 6 o'clock, we're punching out. Like, see you on the other side, Becky. Well, we'll get back to hacking in the morning. So they're starting to look now. It's not just an on-call person, right? So you have some carriers that are, I always call it butts and seat analysts. So it's, do you have 24/7 butts and seats analysts, right? It's not just do you have a EDR solution that has the automation side of it? So they are coming around to that. It's not quite there on the 365 side yet, but it's become identified that 365 is, if you look at, you have identity and endpoints are kind of the two big threats that insurance is looking at. They've realized that 365, not everybody's sitting here running Active Directory still, right? It's become a lot of cloud first, 365 native. That's a major attack point. So today you're starting to see a little bit around it, but they are zeroing in very, very, very quickly. You're going to see a lot more. We've talked about as the industry evolves. This time next year, you're going to see some really robust questions around 365 protections.
Yeah. I mean, right now, a lot of carriers are based in like New York. If you were to bring up BEC to them, they think you're talking about bacon, egg, and cheese. So, I mean, that's what I think of every time you bring it up, but it's what it is.
And to give some context to Will's comment there about coverage for reputational harm, Bill had put to just host and channel us that reputation can be harmed with downtime. There's still there still has to be a way to preserve the info and get them back online quickly. So just making sure that you guys knew that what Will's referencing there is not only is there downtime coverage in a lot of policies, there's also reputational harm coverage, which is really fantastic.
To Bill's point, though, money is ultimately not going to restore your reputation, right? So it's the carriers are putting money towards like PR firms and people to come in and help deal with the fallout of the incident. So they're going to help they're going to do what they can to mitigate the harm of the reputation. But to Bill's point, he talked about getting back up online quickly. Yes. I mean, that is the goal, right? And that's why it's so important to kind of be on the, make sure your client is on the carrier, being in constant communication, because 4 things to drag out what the average ransomware attack is, what, like 14 to 16 days or something, somewhere around there. I don't remember exactly what it is now, but it's something like that. So there is going to be considerable downtime, and yeah, your reputation is going to be hit. At the same time, I mean, Uber got hacked, a bunch of people get hacked, and it's like, oh, your security is not that great. I'm still using Uber whenever I go on trips. Like, and that's because there are people in place who help keep that reputation going. So that's why a good policy is going to carry that for sure.
Yep.
And
also on that note too, go back to Shill for our first session. Is go back and watch the first one. We talk a lot about the coverages, because the biggest piece is, and as MSPs, it's like some of this stuff, the recovery isn't that hard, right? So it's not about the technical stuff. It's to me, as being in IT, it's like that's the smallest value of it. It's all the legal, and we have a cool slide that shows you all the this, that, and the other. But it's like the PR, the business interruption, the reputational harm, the legal, this, that, and the other. So if you're looking at it just for the IR aspect of the technical IR, that's not the value in the policy. You're looking at it wrong.
So, and in our last few seconds here, so Will and Dustin have agreed to join me once again in August. So what used to be known as our Huntress partner panels, you guys will get to be the first ones to know, they're now the community fireside chats. And we're doing them every month now instead of every other month, simply because we have so many topics to cover that every other month just wasn't enough. So in August, we're going to do an office hour session with these guys. So I'm putting the link in the chat right now. If you are not registered for those partner panels, now's a great time to register for that. You'll get the invite for every month, but just know that in August specifically, we'll do some office hours. So call to action is take what you've learned here, go start talking to your clients about their insurance policies, and then come bring us the good, the bad, and the ugly in August, and we'll talk through it. So maybe office hours, maybe cyber therapy, but we'll cover it all.
Cyber therapy sounds great.
I'm gonna have to put my green screen up so I can have a fire behind me for that. Be a good time.
I like that.
Fancy.
Awesome. Thank you all so very much, everybody, for joining us. And we'll get the recordings out. We'll get it all posted and all put together in a nice package for you. And we hope to see you all again in August.